Hello, everyone, and welcome to MeowMix, a Carolina Panthers podcast. My name is Steven.
My name is Jerry.
Breaking news! As of a few hours ago.
I mean,
Jerry and I get together and record whenever we can.
yeah.
So, would nice to have done this middle of the day, but Bryce Young has been benched. Andy Dalton will be your starter Sunday in Las Vegas, in the black hole, or whatever they call that thing.
I don't know, but
Yeah. How you feeling? I mean, what
I,
I have a lot of mixed emotions.
mixed emotions is a great way to put it. I have positives and negatives of this move in week two. Um,
Yeah.
I guess I kind of wanted to go over the positives and negatives because of
Yeah.
both. I think Andy Dalton gives us the best chance to win. According like what I've seen
Yep.
for Bryce this year, he looks completely lost.
Yep.
So Andy Dalton gives us a chance to win. The only problem is, are you writing Bryce Young off? And that's that 1
Yeah.
year and 2 games in. That's a nervous wreck. Considering you brought in Dave Canales to fix him, that's the sole reason you hired Dave Canales. He was a 1 year offensive guy, but he was the quarterback whisperer, so you brought him in. Now, maybe Bryce Young sits down and kind of realizes, hey, maybe figure something out. Maybe his twinkle toes stops, but right now, you never know.
Yeah. And so Canales had a press conference and didn't say a lot. Uh, a lot of, I'm not going to talk about that right now. A lot of those are private conversations. Um, a lot of, I don't want to get into that, kind of, basically he's just making the announcement that Bryce has been benched and Andy will start, and he didn't really want to talk about much else. Um, he did say that the decision was his, but he also, when asked if Tepper had any input, he said, I don't want to really talk about that right now. So,
Oh,
you know,
oh, 100%
I mean,
Tepper made this decision, it sounds like.
Tepper has made it very clear that any major decisions he will be a part of. This I would consider a pretty major decision. So of course he was a part of it. Now, I agree with you. Well, I'm not necessarily agreeing with an opinion of yours, but I agree that the question is, what does this mean,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because Andy Dalton's not the future of the franchise. Nobody should be confused about that, right? That they did not make this change because Andy Dalton's, the uh, your 5-year franchise quarterback. No,
No, he's 36.
right.
A few
He's
years away
he
from
was drafted
starting
the same
regularly.
draft that Cam Newton was drafted in.
Yeah.
Okay, so that should tell you how long he's been around. That being said, Andy Dalton is a veteran quarterback. He has had success in the league. He's won playoff games. Um, he will now be our starting quarterback. And we asked this question yesterday. We asked the question, what is this year about? Right? Is this year about seeing what you have in Bryce Young and evaluating Bryce Young, or is this year about trying to win? And I think this tells you the answer. Like, Canales wants to win. Tepper, I guess, wants to win. And now, is that the right move this year? That's the question.
I think this is less about Canales wanting to win. Instead, Tepper is tired of being the laughing stock and he wants to win so he's not the laughing stock.
Well, that could very well be, because he is right now.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
He
Um,
he has that short man, even though I'm a short man, so syndrome that you know
yeah.
I'm trying not to say the other version of that, but basically he feels like he always has to make up. He's always got to be a top dog. And when something like this, he obviously can't run a franchise and he's just constantly meddling cuz he can't stand the fire.
Yeah. I mean, it does. This feels like a David Tepper move for sure. I mean, we've seen him cut bait. As soon as something looks like it's not working out, he just cuts it. Now that maybe that's an investment thing. I don't know. I'm not a billionaire, obviously. Um, so maybe that's the way it works in that universe, but that's not the way to have success in the NFL. As we discussed yesterday, and you very eloquently screamed it yesterday. Um, so, yeah, I think this is just another example, right? Just another example of Dave Tepper making a decision and then cutting bait as soon as it looks like that decision isn't going to pay off as quickly as it should,
Yeah,
right?
that's 100%. I think that's my biggest negative out of this because if it was Canales who was like, "Hey, I need you to sit down and relax. You are too jumpy. I don't feel comfortable." If you kind of if he explained it like that, but with what you just said, that press conference sounded like, and what I was already kind of thinking in my head is this is a Tepper move. Canales either agreed or didn't agree, but he understood who's writing the checks, so you got to do what you got to do.
And I mean, let's be completely fair here. Like Bryce Young has looked terrible.
Oh,
He
absolutely.
has looked he has been the worst quarterback in the NFL by far the first 2 weeks of the season. He looked bad for most of last season. Now we gave him a pass mostly for last season because of the chaos, right?
Mm-hmm.
But this season he's had the whole off season to work with Canales. Um, you know, he's had the off season to work with these new offensive linemen, with the new skill position players on his team. And he came out week one and he looked terrible. He came
That
out looked week two, he looked even worse. He's missing throws that your backup quarterbacks in the NFL make routinely.
mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, I went back and looked at a bunch of Bryce tape from Alabama today, and I don't know who that guy was, because that looks like a completely different player than what we're seeing right now. Completely different. And if we broke Bryce, I'm not taking any responsibility myself, but if the Panthers broke Bryce because of last season, well, number one, I think Bryce broke a little too fast
Yeah,
because, man, come on. You got to, you're a professional, you're a man. Like, push that aside and let's start fresh. Um, or, was it just smoke and mirrors at Alabama? Some of those throws and stuff you can't fake. Like, the talent was real, but it ain't here anymore, man. Like, this is not what we drafted. This is not what we signed up for. And, you know, sorry, I'm ready to see what Andy Dalton can do this week.
yeah. I mean, I remember doing our reviews of Bryce and stuff like that, and I like CJ Stroud more. I always like to say that just because I feel like I was right on that. But more or less, I mean, the
Both of us.
consensus
Both
was
of us did. That was both of us.
Bryce Young, if he was 3 inches, 4 inches taller, he would be a surefire number one overall pick without a brain in Chicago would trade.
He'd have been talked about like a generational quarterback.
Yeah, and to see him like tippy toes, scared out of his mind, like the O line has been good. Let's be honest, the O line has not been an issue. Like yes, they've given up some pressures, but I mean they're not perfect.
Well,
I
they
mean,
gave up 4 pressures this past week, which is an NFL low.
yep,
And the sacks that Bryce took were both charged to him because frankly they weren't the O line's fault, right?
yeah.
The O
I
line
mean,
did its job.
then he rolls out and has plenty of time to throw it away and just lets a guy sack him. I mean,
That was one, and then the other one was the Moten block where the Moten, Bosa got past Moten eventually, but had Bryce stepped up into the pocket instead of doing whatever he did, he gets away scot free, and Thielen is wide open. Like so, these are the things that Canales looked at, presumably, and saw what he needed to see, which was Bryce just not making routine plays that you have to make, not feeling pressure, not trusting his O line, which to your point has played fairly well so far and will only get better as long as they stay healthy.
mm-hmm.
Um, at the very least, Bryce needs to sit down for a few weeks and reset mentally.
Yeah,
And if that's all this is, I'm fine with that. right?
I agree. If that's what the plan was, if that is what Canales wanted, then I'm all for it. I mean,
It would have been
first of
nice if he'd
all,
have said it. He didn't say it.
exactly. That's what worries me. And then asked him about the Tepper, and he's like, no. It it screams of Tepper interference again.
It does.
And
Yeah.
I don't know when we're gonna get over that. Maybe when you stop seeing him interfere, like at the draft, him and his wife in the draft room, act like making calls and stuff. I don't want to hear that. I want to see the hand off the phone to the owner and that's it. But
Yeah.
that
You make the decisions and then give the owner the chance to say hello, and that's the extent of his involvement.
yeah,
Like successful teams do.
correct. I mean, it's just. I mean, it just reeks that the biggest problem in this franchise is David Tepper, and it doesn't sound like it's going to go away. I,
It's not going to go away.
I mean,
But we're just going to have to hope, like, eventually, given enough years, one of these decisions that he makes is going to work out, despite him, right? And that's what we have to wait for.
but then we're gonna have the Jerry Jones, Jimmy Johnson issue where the owner wants to be credited for all the wind, and or the coach didn't want. Hey,
But that I don't care about that. Like, if I was a Cowboys fan, I'd be pretty okay with how things have gone over the last 30 years, right? You had some Super Bowls in the 90s. You've been competitive. You're a playoff team most of the time. You don't do well in the playoffs, but you at least are there. Like you're in the mix,
I
right?
love the little side jabs at them.
You're in the mix. But it's kind of like what the Panthers were, for the first several years of the franchise, really until Tepper took over. Like, you're going to be in the mix. There were some down years, but there were some Super Bowl appearances. There were lots of playoff appearances, lots of playoff wins.
Mm-hmm.
Exciting times. Those. I'm just thinking about like that Cam Newton era, right? With Cam, Kuechly, Steve Smith. For the beginning of it, you had
Olsen.
CMC, Olsen. Like, those were such fun teams to watch. That 2015 team with just Cam putting the whole franchise on his back. That's just not something that you can see Bryce Young do.
No,
I mean, even in my wildest dreams, I can't see Bryce Young taking the franchise on his back like Cam did back then.
no. I don't see. I just don't. I don't see this Panthers organization moving forward like it currently does.
Yeah, no. No. I mean, everything has been stagnant or down, right? Since Tepper took over. Nothing is up.
Not only that, it's nothing is consistent. Like, this team has no identity. It used to be strong defense, run game, and stuff like that. And then now it's just like
That's
our
chaos.
defense was pretty good last year and good this year, but I wouldn't say they're a defensive team. No, it's just like,
Well, Tepper doesn't want to be a defensive team. He wants to be a prolific offense that scores a lot of points, gets on TV all the time, makes a lot of money. Instead, he's on TV all the time, but for the wrong reasons,
yeah.
right? I mean, we're being just absolutely lambasted by the national media. We're finally getting talked about, but it's for all the wrong reasons.
We are the joke of the NFL.
Yeah.
I used to not laugh at Cleveland Browns fans.
No, but you would be like, I'm glad I'm not that fan base.
And we are now that fan base.
Yeah.
I mean, point blank. That's a great example, because you don't want to laugh at someone's misery like that unless they're Cowboys fan.
But you look at them and you say, I'm glad that's not me.
Yeah.
Things could always be worse. I'm glad that's not me. Well, now other teams are looking at us and saying, I'm glad that's not me.
Hey, we guaranteed Deshaun Watson's contract, but look over there.
No, I'm glad that's not us. But yeah, I mean, Tepper tried, right?
He did.
He desperately tried to get Deshaun Watson here. And now, luckily he did have a limit there. But so, yeah, I mean, it's going to be hard to really grade or judge this until we see what happens Sunday. If Andy Dalton comes out Sunday, throws for 300 yards like he did last year in Seattle, and the Panthers are scoring points, and even if they lose, if it's a competitive game that they were in it in the fourth quarter, obviously it's the right move to sit Bryce. And then maybe if you're 2-10 down the road, or you're obviously out of it, you want to bring Bryce back for the final 5-6 games of the season, do it. But if they turn around and say, next week, Tua has decided to sit out the remainder of the season, or for the health of his career, he's going to sit out the rest of the season, and Miami comes and says, hey, we'll give you a third round pick for Bryce, I think I'm taking that.
That's tough, man. I mean, to drop from a third. I mean, I could see the Panthers doing it. I could see Miami doing it, and I could also see Bryce Young flourishing there. But
And that's the thing, right? Is who, unless you have one of those special quarterbacks that can come in here like Cam Newton was and just be enough, right?
mhm.
Cover up all the flaws on your offense, then I don't know what we have to look forward to here. Certainly not for the rest of this year. Again, we'll see what Andy Dalton does, but he's not that guy, right? He's not your franchise changer.
No, he may
Well,
get
what we're hoping,
another
right?
2-year contract as a
He
bridge
might.
quarterback out of
He
this.
might. And that might not be a bad idea.
No, I mean I think Andy Dalton has been a serviceable quarterback in his career. At one point, I do believe he was like a top 10 type of quarterback. Obviously, 10, not like
He had a couple of seasons where he looked pretty good, but what I really mean by that is if they decide to go away from Bryce, then I would prefer that they not immediately take a quarterback number one this year, right? I would prefer that they build out the team so that when a quarterback does come here, that he has a foundation that he can be successful. So for next year, I would prefer to take, one of these wide receivers that are just insane. Trade back a few picks, right? Take one of these wide receivers that is ridiculous. Take an edge rusher. Take two edge rushers. Like,
take
build out
3
this
edge
team.
rusher.
Yeah. Build out this team. Make sure you have the foundation in place. You've got the offensive line, locked up for a few years here. You need another wide receiver. You've got Jonathan Brooks, who next year will be healthy. You could have some success with Andy Dalton or a veteran bridge type quarterback, a Gardner Minshew, somebody like that. And then you draft your quarterback the following year, right? Or you have enough success to where now you're successful and you draft a quarterback in the second or third round and develop, right? That's how successful teams do it. They don't start from, look at what the Bears did,
Well,
right? The Bears took a year. They got a head start from us, but they took a year to build up. They got their wide receiver. They got a couple of defensive guys. Took another wide receiver this year, right? Then they got their quarterback. They bring a quarterback into a place where he can have some success, right? It's not all on him. He has playmakers.
But you're typically not drafting this early in the draft when you are in that type of situation.
Right.
I'm playing devil's advocate because I kind of disagree with you. If you're picking 1 overall and you have that guy out there, which I don't know if this year has that type of guy.
That was another point, is I don't know that there is a bar none number 1 guy, right? Whereas in 2026, you could have like an Arch Manning who looked pretty damn good Saturday and, has everything you would want in a franchise quarterback. You could have a guy like that if you waited a year.
Yeah, but Quinn Ewers is coming out too, who kept Arch Manning on the bench up until his injury. So
yeah. So again, you might have. Is he coming out this year?
I believe so. He had an awesome last year.
Yeah.
And I think he had to stay in one more year.
So I don't know. Maybe they keep Bryce. Let Bryce play it next year. When you have more talent. I don't know.
I think at this point, we have to see what Andy Dalton does. This is week 2, and we're literally, or week 3. We
I know.
legitimately are discussing draft and quarterbacks.
I mean, what do we have to look forward to as Panthers fans? Like, this is the world we live in now, right? Where we're looking at the number 1 quarterback in 2026, right? Like, but yeah, if Dalton comes out and looks great, and the Panthers look great, then I don't know. Then maybe you kind of have the team in place, and you do go out and you take that number 1 quarterback.
I mean, honestly, you have pieces here. Like, that O-line looks pretty solid now.
Yeah.
Now, Icky is still kind of a question mark, but he's looked solid, so I'm not going to really knock him right now. But everybody else, I feel like, is a really good piece up front. You have, okay, Thielen will be gone. You just drafted Leggett, so you're going to assume he's your future. And then, yes, you're going to probably have to go find another receiver or two. But
yeah, you figure Deontay Johnson, he's only here for 1 year, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's likely gone next year. Thielen's gone for sure next year. You got Leggett and Mingo. That's kind of it. Like, so you got to make some moves there. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, I gotta say, I'm way more excited to watch the game Sunday than I previously was.
Me too. I
mean, I'm way more excited. Just because it's something different.
A little glimmer of hope that the offense is not like.
Well, I mean, it's interesting, right? Like, at least there's an interest now to see what might happen. You just don't know what's going to happen. Whereas had Bryce started, I know exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Right? They're going to score 10 points at most, and they're going to get beat by 2 touchdowns at least. But with Dalton, with a new quarterback in here, maybe something different happens. Or maybe the same thing happens. Like, if he comes out and he looks terrible and the offense doesn't move,
God, what are we going to do?
I'm going to be really hard pressed to think that that's going to happen, though.
Me too.
Just because I think Andy Dalton is, even if he's the 20th best quarterback in the league, even if he's the 25th best quarterback in the league, is better than the worst.
If we come, I'm hitting new lows for this team every single year in the past 3 years.
Yeah, we're begging for Andy Dalton. I mean, of course we've hit a low. Like,
I mean,
rough. This is rough times.
I mean, seriously, we're sitting here going. I remember firing Matt Rule goes, "There's no place to go but up." I remember Frank Reich being let go last year. We can't be worse than last year. Week 1. There's no way we can beat the worst game the Carolina Panthers ever played. Oh wait, we oh my God.
Yeah. It's been just a world of misery. A world of misery we've been living in, but
I'm going side quest here. Have you ever seen the movie Eternal Sunshine of a Spotless Mind?
Once, many years ago.
It's an older movie with Jim Carrey. It's more of a Jim Carrey and Kate Winslet. It's a couple.
Drama, right?
It's a drama. It's not a typical Jim Carrey movie, but they go out and they remove Kate Winslet's character out of his brain. If I could do that with the Carolina Panthers, I would so do that so I could not care. But I do.
You want to lobotomize yourself?
Yes.
I'm not quite there yet. I mean,
I can gleefully do stuff on Sunday and not pay attention and not get my heart ripped out. No, I can't. No, I can't. I've tried.
You can't. It's like an abusive relationship. And we're so in love.
So in love.
That we just keep giving them more chances. I mean, what are you going to do? Like,
it's 2 a.m. and he texted, "What's up? I'm going to respond."
That bald head of his. I mean, what are we going to, like, we're going to choose another team in our in our age that we currently are, no, we're not choosing another team. What am I gonna start cheering for the Chiefs at this point in my life? No, no.
You
I had
are
a
a
friend.
Swiftie.
Yeah, I mean, I like Swift. I don't like the Chiefs. I had a buddy who was a Redskins fan, right?
Hmm.
Then they changed the name to Commanders. He says, I can't do this. I'm going to start rooting for Buffalo. So he roots for Buffalo for like half a season. And he's like, I can't do this. I'm back on the Redskins. And he still calls them the Redskins. Um, he will not use the C word, even though I constantly use it around him. Um, just dropping it in random conversations, Commanders.
Commanders, let's
And
ride.
yeah, that's a nice, good shot off the tee, Commanders. If we're playing golf. But yeah, I mean, it's ingrained. It's in us, right? This
Hmm.
franchise, we were kids when this franchise came along.
Oh
We've
yeah.
grown up being fans of this franchise. It's part of our lives. It's a big part of our lives. And as dumb as a non-sports fan would sound to them, right? It's part of the family, honestly. Like it just is.
It really
And
is.
that's hard to let go.
And when your team is doing good and someone bad mouths them, it's like someone's like bad mouthing one of your family members. You're like, no, you
Yeah,
can't do that.
it gets me mad. I get angry, legitimately angry, even if they're right. And everybody's right now. This is a terrible, terrible franchise.
God, I feel like we are doing a therapy session every episode now.
I think it's just for me and you because we need it, right? Like, I mean, we talk every day anyway, but it's just something about this team right now, and then maybe it's just the age that we are at that we just don't want to go through. I don't want to spend time feeling like this, right?
The
I don't want to
agony
spend
of defeat. Like,
hours of Sunday just feeling bad.
like,
Don't like it.
no, no. And it's, I get, it's like 4 years of just
Yeah.
straight sadness on Sunday. Like, when have we had any glimmer of hope? It was Steve Wilkes. I mean, that was
Yeah.
it.
When have you and I, or when has MeowMix been able to talk about a winning season like that Steve Wilkes, that half a season there was it, and that
Yeah,
was fun, and
yeah.
we enjoyed the hell out of that. But this has been, we have just not been blessed.
We got hit by the Dave Tepper semi truck, and somehow we
Yeah.
got caught underneath it, and we're just getting dragged down the highway now.
Yes, all of us Panthers fans are doing that. Yes. Oh man. Well, we will obviously have
The
a
game.
more in-depth preview here in a few days, but we wanted to get on to talk about this a little bit. It's a huge thing. It's a monumental franchise-altering decision that has just been made,
Yeah.
and we'll see how long it lasts. We'll see if it works, but you got something different to watch on Sunday, and
Hey,
for me, that's a positive.
it's the Red Rifle, man.
Hey, I never thought I'd be excited to see Andy Dalton starting for my football team.
No. Put me back like 5, 6 years ago. I would have thought you were insane.
Yeah. What happened to Teddy Bridgewater? He's still in the league?
Why you gotta ask me that at the end of the episode? I have no clue right now off the top of my head.
I just was thinking, like, had we just stuck with Teddy Bridgewater, I feel like this franchise would be in a totally different place right now.
I did too.
Now, we're not winning Super Bowls with Teddy Bridgewater, but I feel like it would have set us up on a much different path
Yeah. I mean,
had we just
heck,
honored that deal.
he understood Matt Rule wasn't doing certain things correctly, and he called him out when he left. He was like, "No ill will, but you need to start working on some
Oh yeah,
things."
yeah. Well, and a lot of those things cropped up that next season, and We heard about it from a lot more people after Matt Rule was gone.
Yeah.
3-0 Matt Rule.
3-0.
But this is what Tepper does, man. Like he's just not fixing the problems. He's not fixing the foundations, right? He's trying these quick fixes. You bring in Matt Rule. He's this guy that can turn around programs fast, right? You bring in Frank Reich because you've got a quarterback. We're going to get him up to speed fast. You draft Bryce Young because he's the most pro ready. He's the most ready to step in immediately. You don't even have to put a good team around him, says Tepper, because he's such a good point guard. He's going to be able to get the ball to anybody. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Now you're hiring Dave Canales and you give Bryce Young 2 games.
Yeah. He's a coach whisperer. That's why we hired him, to fix Bryce. 2 games. Again, and if this is Canales making this decision, I get it. I hope it is, but it just doesn't feel like it. It feels like a Tepper decision.
It feels like an odd decision for a rookie head coach to make in his 3rd game.
Mm-hmm.
To get the franchise quarterback that was drafted and traded for and just give up on him immediately, that's a David Tepper move. It just is. Canales is not making that decision by himself.
No, he's not.
So Tepper strikes again.
We want to thank everyone for listening. If you liked the therapy session, please let your friends know. Please follow us on Twitter at MeowMix Podcast. If you have any questions or comments, you can email us at mailbag@meowmixpodcast.com. If you leave us a 5-star review with a comment on Apple Podcasts, we'll read it on the show. Please like and subscribe on YouTube.
Jimmy Jams, Jay, all of our friends, we will be talking about some of your comments, questions on our next episode. This one was just about Bryce. So until then, everybody stay safe out there and keep pounding.
Jimmy Jams?